Get ready for Netflix's gripping new medical drama, Pulse. Set in a cutting-edge Miami trauma center, third-year resident Dr. Danny Sims is unexpectedly thrust into a promotion when beloved chief resident Dr. Xander Phillips gets suspended. Then, with the emotional and physical stakes at their highest, a storm will push the hospital and its residents to their limits. Witness how life can change in a heartbeat when you're operating under pressure. Watch Pulse, only on Netflix.
This episode is brought to you by LifeLock. It's tax season, and we're all a bit tired of numbers. But here's one you need to hear. $16.5 billion. That's how much the IRS flagged for possible identity fraud last year. Now here's a good number. 100 million. That's how many data points LifeLock monitors every second. If your identity is stolen, they'll fix it. Guaranteed. Save up to 40% your first year at LifeLock.com/podcast. Terms apply.
Welcome to Don't Retire, Graduate, the podcast that asks you what you want to be when you grow up so you can graduate into retirement with a purpose and a passion. I'm your host and valedictorian, Eric Brotman, and after nearly 200 episodes and a year-long hiatus, Don't Retire, Graduate is back for Season 6. We'll be bringing you interviews with amazing guests every other Thursday, and on alternating weeks, we're hosting a new segment called Diary of a Financial Advisor, which we know you'll all enjoy. So please subscribe and check out our new episodes every Thursday. Today, I'm pleased to be joined by Nick Aufenkamp. Nick is a real estate agent gone rogue. After helping over 100 clients close on over $100 million of real estate, he's now teaching home buyers how to purchase a home without the need to hire a buyer's agent or something to that effect. So says the bio. Nick, welcome to Don't Retire, Graduate.
Hey, Eric, thank you so much for having me on. It's an honor to be here.
Well, we're going to have some fun today because I know everyone can do almost anything for themselves. You can change your own tire. You can probably do your own root canal if you want. But I've bought 3 homes in my life. I consider myself reasonably savvy, and I've never done it on my own. I've always used an agent, for better or for worse. And you're going to tell us why it's for worse, I guess. But first, tell us how you got into the real estate business and sort of how you went rogue.
Yes, that is a fantastic question. And just to clarify, I as much as I love being the DIY guy, I do not advise anybody try their own root canal. So I do have some limits as to my DIY push.
enough.
But I got into real estate a little bit less traditional path than most. I was in pastoral ministry and was looking for a way to make a bit of extra money. And so started to get into real estate investing and had a friend of mine who was a realtor, great guy. And as I started buying properties, I kept looking at these closing statements though and seeing just how much he was making on each deal, $12,000, $14,000, $17,000 on some of these transactions. And so I was like, man, if I'm going to get serious about this, I should really learn how to represent myself and reduce transaction costs. But at that point, I didn't realize that there was even a category for self-representation. And so I was like, well, I guess I need to get my real estate license. And this was all around the time of the world shutting down with COVID. And so my family and I made a big transition. We moved from Minnesota back to my hometown in the Portland metro, Portland, Oregon side. And so I got my real estate license, started working for a home builder, local home builder. And that was a unique experience because while I was learning about homes, still doing some real estate investing, most of the home buyers that I worked with in the new construction industry were self-represented buyers. They didn't have their own buyer agent. And so my exposure to the industry was, okay, I'm learning to buy properties myself. I'm helping people on the other end of the deal buy property, new construction without an agent. And then about a year and a half ago, I went out on my own to just do my own real estate business, helping people buy and sell. And the more that I was helping my buy-side clients, the more I realized these are highly competent people. A lot of them are CEOs or doctors. They have a ton of competence and skill. They just don't have the specific education about the deal, transaction flow of a real estate deal. And if they did, I think they could handle this whole process themselves. So I talked with one of my friends that was about ready to purchase a home and asked him and his wife if they would want to be my guinea pig on this DIY journey. And they said, whoa, we could save, they're buying a little over $1 million home. They said, whoa, we could save over $30,000 in buyer agent commissions. It's like, yeah, you could. And so that was a pretty easy sell for them. And I really then got to experiment with this kind of third way of helping people buy a home where they're not completely on their own, but they truly are self-represented. So that might be a long, windy road, but that's how we got here.
So you were talking about buying DIY. You were not talking about selling DIY. Is that true, or are you suggesting that also? You're just suggesting the buy side. Okay, that makes sense. Got it.
I am. Yep.
So I've always had a problem with buyer's agency. And I learned this at a young age when I bought my first home. And every time I've bought a home, it strikes me that if you're hiring a buyer's agent, you're hiring someone to represent your best interests. And what that means is you want them to help you get the best deal on a terrific house and to make sure that whatever you're buying is, number one, up to snuff and passes all the inspections and such, but also that you're getting a fair, if not terrific, deal on the house. The problem is the buyer's agent makes more money if you get a worse deal.
Right.
That strikes me as inherently a conflict. I get it on the seller side. The more the seller can get you in terms of the deal, the more money they make. I'm okay with that. Mm-hmm. But on the buyer side, they really get paid more if you do the transaction sooner without negotiating it, and you pay more than you should. And that just strikes me as a problem. So if you're solving that problem, I can't wait to learn more about the Homebuyer Academy. Tell me more.
Yeah, that was another huge piece of it for me. As the way I'm wired is I want to bring as much value to the world as I possibly can. That's just kind of been part of my DNA. And the fact is, as I was closing more and more of these buy-side transactions, just thinking about the amount of money I'm making on each deal relative to the amount of value that I'm bringing. And honestly, it was pretty rare that I was saving more people more money than the amount that I was walking away from or away with at the end of each day. And that was starting to grate on me. And then as I looked at the industry on the whole, you've put your finger exactly on it. There is a complete misalignment of incentive structure between a buyer's agent and the buyer client. Because it's, yes, as you said, the more that a buyer spends on a commission-based arrangement, the more the buyer's agent is going to make. And the quicker that a buyer's agent can get their client to purchase a home, the quicker that buyer's agent gets paid. And so you're putting the buyer's agent in a very awkward position where to look out for the best interests of their client, they are typically having to do what is in their worst interest personally. And while I think there are good people and sincere buyer agents out there, I just don't think that we should put people in that kind of a position where for me to professionally help you, I've got to do something that's detrimental to myself. At least we shouldn't have a system that's designed that way that just expects every player to be extremely altruistic. And so I have wanted to, this DIY Homebuyer Academy is a way of saying, okay, how can we reimagine this process to make it more financially efficient and to align the incentive structures between the one who's helping you buy a home and your ultimate goals, which is, like you said, to get the very best deal possible.
So I'm enjoying looking at your at part of your website. You look very uncomfortable in that photo, actually. In terms of in terms of getting started here, tell me more about the Academy. Is this an online course? Is it an ongoing relationship? Is it a client consumer type relationship? Is it just collateral materials? How does it work?
Yeah, great question. So it's a community, a course, and one-on-one coaching. And the community and the course aspects of that, at least right now, those are entirely free. And so I encourage anybody who is even remotely interested in learning how to navigate the home buying process and how to do that from a do-it-yourself perspective, to join the school community. That's SKOOL. You can join the school community for DIY homebuyer, and there you'll get to connect with myself and others that are actively going through the home buying process as DIY buyers. We do occasional live calls. I answer questions that are in the comments that anybody has. There's a classroom with a free course that covers all the essentials of the home buying process with a bunch of downloadable materials. It's a ton of value that's absolutely free. And the reason that I'm giving it all away is because, one, I realize that right now everybody has a course, and there's a lot of people on the internet who's not worth their salt when it comes to education. And especially when we're talking about one of the largest financial decisions that somebody's going to make, a new model for home buying, I want to kind of tear down the wall to just say, hey, here's who I am, and let me give away as much as I possibly can to you so that you can understand this process. So that's the community and the course piece. Now, the reality is every single transaction is unique. You've got unique individuals on the sell side, unique individuals on the buy side. And so any course is at most going to be able to give you like 85% of the transaction. But there's going to be that last 15% where some folks are going to say, hey, I am convinced that I want to do it DIY, but I am not convinced that I want to just go at this based upon a course and hopefully somebody answers my question in the community on time. And so for those folks, I do offer one-on-one coaching, and that is a paid service. It's a monthly service, so that, again, what you're compensating me is not tied to your outcomes in terms of commission-based percentage. It's also something that is going to be a fraction of the cost of a typical buyer's agent. But that's a package that we just put together based upon your unique situation and needs.
So you mentioned that this is sometimes the largest financial transaction in someone's life. And I think that's true. In fact, a lot of balance sheets you see for families, the biggest asset is their home. Are you working primarily with folks who are going to make this a primary or secondary residence for themselves, or primarily with folks who are looking to do this for investment purposes, or is there a good blend? Because it's a totally different animal if you're going to live in it than if you're going to try and create either rental income or resale value. So who is your typical attendee of this academy?
Yeah. In initially building it, my thought was, well, this is going to have the most value to people who are investors. But funny enough, the majority of the clients that I've worked with so far have been folks that are buying primary residences. And they're folks that have had bad experiences with buyer's agents in the past where they got burned. They had hoped that the buyer's agent was going to be looking out for their best interests. And in hindsight, they were left wanting in that department. Or they're people that, again, like I've worked with a couple of doctors now, that they're just like, if somebody just gave me a little bit of guidance here, I should be able to figure this out. And they just prefer being able to be the one who is responsible entirely for this big decision. I've kind of used the comparison before of it's the difference between hiring a buyer's agent. Buyer's agents will hate me for saying this, but hiring a buyer's agent is kind of like calling for an Uber, where you get to set the destination of where you want to go, but you're not the one behind the wheel. And so you are putting a lot of trust in the hands of somebody else versus DIY Homebuyer Academy model, which is, hey, you stay in the driver's seat, but I'll be your GPS system, giving you guidance, helping you detour when we run into roadblocks, but I'm not taking the autonomy out of your hands. And there's a lot of people that when it comes to the biggest decision of their life, financially perhaps, they don't want to hand over that control.
I know there are some married couples out there who are thinking, there's no way I'm letting my husband or wife do this themselves. If for no other reason than they're thinking, I want someone to blame, or I want my wife to have someone to blame if this goes wrong other than me. I mean, I'm sure there's some of that happening out there, not to cast any aspersions on my own home, but that is certainly a possibility. There's also other people involved in the real estate transaction. So for people who've never bought a home, or for people who've bought one or two, it's not just the realtor. And of course, you have the buy side and the sell side realtor potentially. You have the buyer and the seller as families or property owners or what have you. But you also potentially have mortgage lenders, which means banks or financial institutions. You might have, you certainly have a title company or someone who's handling the transfers and all the taxation and all the legalities of it. You might have, you might be getting advice about this from from an attorney or a financial advisor or an accountant or others. So this could really be a large boardroom of humans, and you're talking about eliminating one of them and still saving a fair amount of money in the process. What's the downside? Other than my wife saying this is my fault? What is the real downside of DIY in your opinion?
Yeah, fantastic question, because you're right. There are a tremendous number of parties in a real estate transaction, a lot of eyes on these things. So the potential downsides here are, excuse me, I'm so sorry. My dog is growling. He almost never does this. Hopefully we can.
Well, look, I mentioned downsides, and he reacted as he might. He's like, "Oh, now you're out. You're out to give Nick a difficult question, and I don't like it. That's fine."
I'm so sorry about that.
No, don't be sorry. Life happens.
All right. Yes. So the downsides, the potential downsides of doing it yourself are that you are taking on more responsibility yourself. There is going to be a higher commitment of time. Now, I don't think it's tremendously higher amount of time, but you are going to be the one who's doing all of your property research. You're going to be the one who is making the phone calls to the listing agent or to the seller. You're the one who's doing the back and forth and negotiations, showing up for appraisals or home inspections. And at the end of the day, you're the one that is responsible for what you've signed and for the decisions that you make throughout the process. Now, I'm here to give you guidance, especially as your coach, to help you with negotiation strategy, to help you with putting together comparative market analysis. But at the end of the day, you are the one that has the responsibility for those things. So that's one potential downside. Now, some people are saying, yeah, I want that. And I've got a little bit of extra time. It's worth it to me. I would be attending all those things anyway. That's fine. The other downside is that this model is new, and the real estate industry is extremely resistant to change. And that's one of the most unfortunate things that I have seen, is that a lot of self-representing DIY home buyers, they've been met with resistance by listing agents, because listing agents often also serve as buyer's agents, and they stand to lose business if DIY home buying becomes more of the norm. And so that's definitely something that I feel like I'm playing both an educator role as well as a consumer advocacy role to help make a legitimate pathway that's widely recognized for self-representing buyers.
The real estate industry has had a very interesting monopoly on this process for a very long time. So to your point, I can appreciate why they're not excited to lose potentially half of the revenue from a transaction, which you're right. I mean, somebody who's a seller's agent on Tuesday might be a buyer's agent for somebody else on Wednesday, or even the same afternoon. So that makes sense to me. There are significant associations and lobbying groups, and whether it's the home builders associations or whether it's the realtors and all of the different lobbying groups, is there a group of advocates for the DIY space, or is it still kind of the Wild West here?
It really is the Wild West here. I think that there are going to be more and more of these advocacy groups that are popping up, especially in light of the recent lawsuit and subsequent settlement against the National Association of Realtors, which I believe gets approved here in November 2024. So there's a lot more attention that's being turned towards consumer protection within transacting real estate. I think that that's a really good thing. And I think that with how much skepticism there is out there about, hey, can I really trust my agent? What sort of protections are in place? Who's got oversight on the real estate industry? Those questions, I think, are going to lead to a lot of positive change within the industry over the coming years. But unfortunately, we are sort of, I believe, in the infancy of that. That there's been a lot of gatekeeping, there hasn't been a lot of transparency, and so we're just starting to see some really positive changes on those fronts.
And some of the real estate brokerages are now calling themselves, what they're calling themselves discount brokerages. They're working for less than the traditional. I'm sure they were met with terrible resistance too. There are probably some highly compensated real estate firms who say don't work with those folks because they're undercutting us and so forth. And so it's a little bit territorial. Are you seeing that within the real estate community as well? I mean, so many realtors, to me, it's like 10% of the realtors do 90% of the business, and the other 90% of realtors sell a house a year. Is that my imagination, or is that true?
No, you're absolutely right. It is really crazy, like how thin it is up at the top, how it's such a small percentage of agents that are making insane money because of the volume of transactions that they're doing. And it's funny because for some of them are legitimately just incredible negotiators, incredible agents, especially on the listing side. But the barriers to entry to get into real estate have been so low. In the past, with buyer agent commissions, the buyer's agent never had to negotiate commissions. It was just a given that the seller was going to be paying some percentage. And so you had a lot of folks that got into the industry because they're like, hey, even if I just sell 1 or 2 homes a year, 3% of $700,000, that's $21,000. That's worth it to me to get licensed if I've got a niece or nephew that's going to be buying a home sometime in the next year or so. I can be the friends and family agent. And so there wasn't really high expectations. And it was like you could be a part-time agent, essentially making the same amount as a top performing agent per transaction. So that has led to, I think, a glut of folks coming in. That the top performing agents, their business, some of it's selling homes, but really it's lead generation. That's the business that they're in, is getting leads and getting new clients to work with. And so the number of sellers and buyers that talk about as soon as they sign the agreement with their agent, kind of getting ghosted by them, it's alarming, the number of times that happens. And I do see a lot of new models popping up. It's funny, like even the idea of a discount broker is a bit disparaging and speaks to the issues within the industry, because they say that all commissions are supposed to be negotiable and that this industry is built to have competition, and that competition is supposed to serve the consumer. But then we've got traditional agents that label anybody new that comes to town as the discount broker that isn't going to give you the full services that a traditional agent would, and they disparage them and kind of outcast them that way. We saw that happen especially with Redfin early on. Redfin's really the only one that's been able to kind of push through a lot of that noise. So hopefully more models will pop up, flat fee models, hourly models, but it's like you said, it's kind of the Wild West right now.
Well, I've read some of your stuff, Nick, and I saw the Rockstar Realtors versus the door holders, and I love that. Though it's not the kindest thing to call somebody a door holder necessarily, but I get it. I mean, especially since most of the time I feel like the consumer is the one who says, "Oh, I found this house online, or I saw it in my neighborhood, or whatever. I want to go check it out," and all they're really doing is getting a guided tour. So I feel you. I sort of get that. Tell me, let's talk a little bit about the title process, because that to me is the scary part, not the buying and selling and the negotiating. I mean, heck, I'm a financial guy. I can do that. But the title work is where you sit down at a table, usually at the last second. Money is being wired somewhere, sometimes a lot of money, and you're signing your name 78 times on things you have no shot at reading. And if you read them, you're not going to understand them. And if you read them and understand them, you're not going to remember them anyway. Like, what is wrong with that process? Is this just, and maybe we can beat on some lawyers for a little bit together, but is this just over lawyering where everything is disclosed, but then nothing is useful because it's a phone book full of forms?
Right. I mean, I do think that is a huge part of the problem. We kind of live in a society that's been over lawyered in so many ways. You think of the terms and conditions that you're given anytime you sign up for a new service online, and you can't scroll through that thing quickly enough before hitting accept and agree. And unfortunately, the title process.
You don't read those entirely?
I'm giving myself away.
I'm the only one who reads that every time Apple does something. Oh, silly me. You're right. You just nod, smile, and accept, and now they own your house. I mean, it's unbelievable. But all right, I didn't mean to interrupt you, but it was a great analogy.
No, I love it.
Yeah.
It's so I do think that's a part of it, but that's one thing when you're accepting terms and conditions on a service that's $7 a month. That's a whole different thing when you're spending $700,000 plus on a home, and you do want to be really aware of what it is that you're signing. I think that title companies and a lot of those documents tend to be loan documents, origination kind of things, stuff that's required by the lender. Title companies and loan officers, I think, are trying to do a better job at getting those documents out earlier for folks to be able to review prior to signing. But there's a couple of things. It's a little bit ironic that we talk about these things being over lawyered, and then one of my recommendations is you can hire a real estate attorney to be in the room with you at closing to help you review anything, and again, it feels like, wow, it's incredibly self-serving to the whole lawyer industry. But frankly, a real estate attorney is going to be able to look out for your interests in that situation a lot better than most real estate agents are. Real estate agents don't have a legal background. Yeah, they're going to be more familiar with those documents, but they actually can't give legal advice outside of a very limited purview of the purchase and sale agreement. And so the agent doesn't serve a whole lot of value other than just kind of giving you the smile and thumbs up like, yep, this is normal. Or, hey, maybe we should pause here and then call in the big boys to look at these numbers. So you kind of cut that out by just having a real estate attorney. Otherwise, you can, as awkward as it feels, go slow, ask the title agent questions. They're a third party to the transaction. They don't have any stake one way or the other. And so they'll explain things to the best of their ability. And if there's anything that feels fishy or off, to just hit pause on the whole thing until you get the clarity that you need. I think people can feel pressured in those moments. It's exciting, it's emotional, but it is well worth just taking your time on those and not rushing through signing.
Well, I think the pressure is enormous. If you've already sold your home and you're settling on a house and getting the keys that day and you have to put something on hold, the stress there, now you feel homeless for a period of time. In addition, you say the title company doesn't have an axe to grind one way or the other. They don't have a side, but their only incentive is that the deal get done. So they want to grease the skids one way or the other. And then while we're putting buyer's agents under the bus, and we're going to have no friends left after this, by the way, but while we're doing that, how about the lenders? The lenders who are not in a position to tell you how much house you should consider. That's for the financial advisors. They're going to tell you how much you can qualify for, which is pushing the envelope just as far as they can so that they get paid the most possible. So now your buyer's agent's going to find you the worst deal on the biggest house they can get you in based on what the mortgage company can qualify you for, and you just paid extra for everything without having any real advocacy for yourself. All right, I'm off my soapbox. I did go all Joe Rogan today, and I feel bad, but Nick, I don't know how to thank you for this. I am going to make sure that folks know how to check out your information, but I can't let you off the show and off the hook without asking a fundamental question, which is, what do you want to be when you grow up?
Yeah, it's a simple answer for me. It really comes down to, and I'm sorry if this feels like dodging it, but I want to be the best father that I possibly can. And the thing is that I'm on my way. I've got 3 kids, but I can't say that I'm there yet because and I'll always, hopefully be dad. So it's kind of like one of those, how do I know when I've arrived, when I've grown up? But I hope that one day I'll know. And that's the real motivation underneath everything that I'm doing. I see an opportunity to make a difference, to set an example for them, to bring what I believe is positive change to an industry that desperately needs it. And it's a big thing to tackle. And that's exactly the message that I want to send to my kids of, hey, when you see problems in the world, when you see things that don't feel right to you, you have the autonomy and the power, and to a degree, to whatever degree you're capable, a responsibility to go forward and make a change. And I believe that value comes back around to us, and that in what I'm building here, that it'll provide well to set my kids up for their futures too. So that's what it really boils down to for me, is just when I grow up, when I'm looking back at the end of my days, I hope that I've done an amazing job as a dad.
Well, Nick, number one, you're bringing a lot of value to this industry, and you've given a lot of free resources, and we'll put them all in the show notes. And it sounds like the world needs a lot more dads like you too. So I congratulate you on an excellent answer. Not that there's a grade for this. This is an ungraded assignment, but nonetheless, it was an excellent answer. How can folks learn more about the Homebuyer Academy and more about you, Nick?
Yeah, thanks so much, Eric. This has been so fun. And yeah, like I mentioned a moment ago, the best place to connect with me is going to be at that school community, skool.com/DIY homebuyer. Joining the community there, like I said, you'll have to set up an account with school, but otherwise it's entirely free. And that's where you can ask me questions directly, engage with the course. If you just want to learn more about the DIY Homebuyer Academy, you can go to DIYHomebuyerAcademy.com. You can also find me on all of the social media places at DIY Homebuyer. So whether that's TikTok or X or YouTube, those are the places that I'm most active. Would love to connect with folks there.
Nick, you've given our listeners a lot to think about. And even though you're not doing your own root canal, you didn't rule out doing your own tire change. So I give you credit for that. Thanks for joining us on Don't Retire, Graduate. It's been a pleasure getting to know you.
Thank you so much, Eric.
I'd like to thank all of you for listening and watching today. If you enjoy our show, please subscribe, leave a rating on your favorite podcast platform, and share it with your friends and family so they can join you on your journey to financial freedom. If you'd like to send us a topic or idea you'd like to discuss in a future episode of Don't Retire, Graduate, please post it on our Facebook page or tweet us at Brotman Planning. We'll be back next week with another entry in our Diary of a Financial Advisor, and in 2 weeks with another engaging guest. For now, this is Eric Brotman reminding you, don't retire, graduate.
Securities offered through Kestra Investment Services, LLC. Kestra IS. Member FINRA SIPC. Investment advisory services offered through Kestra Advisory Services, LLC. Kestra AS. An affiliate of Kestra IS. Kestra IS or Kestra AS are not affiliated with Brotman Financial or any other entity discussed.
Hi, my name is Sarah, and I want to tell you about my podcast called Can I Offer You Some Feedback? I'm a business consultant and executive coach with over 20 years experience in change management, leadership development, and naturally providing feedback to high performers. My podcast is for those of you who have a complicated relationship with feedback, whether giving, receiving, avoiding, or seeking. Feedback is essential for our development. In each episode, you'll hear from real people across industries with their ideas, perspectives, and best practices on feedback. I'll also be sharing business bites with you, simple explanations of organizational tools, management techniques, and leadership philosophies that will help you and your businesses thrive. You can listen to Can I Offer You Some Feedback on your favorite podcast app, or learn more at evergreenpodcasts.com.
The world's best-known investor and Wall Street expert Warren Buffett once said, Wall Street is the only place that people ride to in a Rolls Royce to get advice from those who take the subway. Mr. Buffett's quote is remarkably accurate, but how many people would rather receive advice from him than someone simply guessing? Welcome to Buy, Hold, Sell, your single source for Wall Street knowledge and profitable guidance. Please join me, Todd Schoenberger, and fellow trader Tobin Smith, as well as host Veronica Dudo, for a podcast known to move the needle for investors. Tobin and I are seasoned Wall Street executives with deep investment experience, and we are prepared to share our advice to those who choose to listen. Download Buy, Hold, Sell today on the Evergreen Podcast Network or your favorite podcast channel.